Okay, I wanted to make a video on how to install the digital counters that I make for the Polaroid SX-70 cameras. And to do that, what I've done is I've gotten two cameras to represent the two different versions of body flex that you'll find in the camera, because it'll change the way you need to install this. So this is a Model 1 camera, and typically you only find this flex cable on a Model 1. It's the uh, sort of brownish orange capped on version of a body flex. And then this is the other version you'll find. This is on a Model 3 that I bought for parts, but it demonstrates it just as well as any other camera. And it's the sort of waxy paper body flex you'll find in a Model 2, Model 3, Sonar, etc. The big difference between these two flexes is that they route the power differently. So on a Model 1, if you look at the negative battery terminal, it leaves the negative terminal, it goes through the door switch and then down to the hinge switch, through the hinge switch and into the motor and the circuitry. On a later model with this type, it leaves the battery terminal and first goes through the hinge switch, out of the hinge switch, into the door switch, and then on to the circuitry and the motor. So because of the way the door switch is positioned differently, it changes the way the counter needs to be wired in. And I'll explain when I go through each camera. But essentially, with a Model 1, the problem with the battery terminal being before the door is that if you open the door, it's going to cut off power to the rest of the camera and the counter. And so you need to make some modifications to this connection here in order to allow the counter to stay powered while the door is open. Now that can also be avoided if you use a Polaroid, and I'll explain when I go through that as well, because with a Polaroid, you'll actually connect the ground of the Polaroid or the buck converter into the hinge area here. And so you will bypass this portion of the circuit, which will therefore mean that the counter is always powered even when the door is open and closed. The counter needs to know the state of the door in order to know when you're removing packs and putting packs in. So it's important that the door switch is utilized when installing the counter. So I'll start with the easier version first, which is the more modern body flex, and demonstrate how to install the counter on this camera. Now, before I actually do any desoldering, I just want to go through the actual connections and where they go. So all the wires are color coded, and the blue wire here, this is the wire that senses the door state. It needs to be wired to this top or frontmost door switch connector. Okay, the red and the white wires will connect to the motor. The red is the positive motor connection, so it's the bottom connection in this shot here, and the white is the negative motor connection, or the top terminal in this shot here. So you want to connect the red and the white to the motor. The black is your ground connection for your counter, and you're going to want to connect it to this outside hinge switch here. So when you open and close the camera, it connects and disconnects the ground, turning on and off the counter. The last wire is for auto eject. This will not work on SX-70R cameras, but it will work on any vintage shutter, or if you have an open SX-70, it will work on that as well. And you're going to want to connect that to this connector right here, which controls auto eject. Okay. But before you do any of that, you need to get the old counter out. So to start, you're going to want to desolder the 3 counter connectors and the hinge switch connectors. That'll give you access to the counter. So I'll go ahead and do that first.
You're gonna want
All right, once you got the solder off, these connectors have there's a little hook on them, so they kind of grab on, and you just gotta kind of work them off. They will come off though. Okay, so there's the counter, and you've got the 3 connectors on the counter as well. And then you're going to want to get this hinge switch desoldered as well. Okay. And if you pop out the motor as well. Okay. Now you got good access to the old counter. And you're going to want to take, depending on the model, either the square-headed screwdriver that removes the bottom screws or a Torx screwdriver if it's on a Model 1, I believe. And there's one screw. I don't know if you can see this. There's one screw in here, and there's one screw down in here between the counter and those terminals that you just desoldered. So if you remove those, and this one's a Torx because it's a Model 3. And then the old counter should lift out. Okay, and then save those screws because you're going to need them to put the new counter in. That's the old counter. Okay, so you're going to take your new counter, you're going to insert it where the old counter went. And screw it back down. I'm only going to put one screw in for this demonstration so I can get it back out easily. But if you were doing it on your own camera, you'd also want to put the screw in here. The reason why I'm not going to do that is because I want to take this off after. So you're going to want to lay out your wires. So the red and the white wires go towards the motor. So just separate those out. And then the blue, the yellow, and the black are going to come back this way. And you're going to want them to sort of come out of that little slot there. Then take your motor, place it back. Now I'm not going to trim these wires because I want to reuse this counter, but you would want to cut them down to length. So for the motor, you're going to want your white wire connected to the negative or the top motor terminal right here, and your red wire connected to the bottom or the positive motor terminal right here. You would sort of measure out how much wire you need, cut it, and trim it accordingly. You can tuck excess wire into this fold here as well, so don't cut it too short. But I'm going to just leave my wires long for this demonstration. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of solder to each of these motor terminals. And then we will attach the white wire to the negative terminal. And the red wire to the positive terminal. Okay, now your door. What I like to do with the door is I actually like to run it under the body flex. and over to the door. Now you would measure this out, cut it here, and trim it as necessary. I'm going to leave mine long again. I'll just zoom in a bit here. But you essentially want to attach it to this side of the door. Just trim that back a bit. Okay, that's the door. And you would tape all this down with Kapton. Then you've got your hinge. First, I'm just going to reattach this connector to the hinge. Just going to resolder down that flex connector to the hinge that I removed. And then your black hinge wire now on a model on this type of flex cable is going to go on the outside connector. Let me just zoom in. So you're going to want it connected to this connector here on this type of flex cable, so that when the camera is closed, it disconnects the connection back to the battery. So I'll just attach that. Okay. And then if your camera has auto eject, so essentially any model but a SX-70R, you'll want to reattach the auto eject to this pad here. Okay. So normally this excess wire wouldn't be hanging off because you would have cut your wires to fit. But now you can fold this piece down here, put a piece of tape across here, and reinsert your motor. So I'll just attach my motor quickly here. And I'll just use a piece of Kapton to sort of hold this connector here around the side like that. And then all these wires, they wouldn't be as loose as this, but you would make sure they're all hidden away and secured. So now if I insert a film pack, hopefully there's some power left in this. So it's gone to manual dark slide eject. Okay, if you want it on auto eject, you double push the door latch till you get the menu icon, and then continue to press it until you get A for auto eject. Wait a few seconds. It'll toggle on. You can toggle it on or off at this point. Wherever you leave it's where it will stay. So then leave it on, wait a few seconds. It's now on. Now if I reinsert the film pack, it auto ejects to 8. And then continues to count down. So that is essentially the modern body flex, or the body flex after the Model 1. Quite simple. You just have to make the right connections. No modifications to the flex needed. And you're good to go. So with a Model 1, the big difference is that where the door switch is positioned, when you open the door, it's going to cut power to the rest of the camera because the battery terminal is here. So it goes through the door switch first. And if you do that, the counter, which is connected back in the hinge with its ground, is going to lose power as well. And then the counter is not going to know that you've removed the film when the door is open. So now, sorry, if you're using a Polaroid and depending on how you've wired the Polaroid, you'll often attach your ground back here. So this will always be grounded along here. So you can actually connect your door to this side, the other side from the opposite side of what we did on the modern body flex. And that way when the door is closed, it's going to be getting the ground from the pole vault. When the door is open, it's going to see that the door is open because it's going to lose that ground connection. So that's if you're using a pole vault. You can just switch the door sensing wire to this bottom connector here if your pole vault is grounding through here. If you're going to use the original terminals, you have to desolder this switch entirely. Okay, use the switch for the counter by connecting to one side. Have the other side connect to this, to these what do you call it? This circuit here. And you'll want to bridge this. So it's a little hard to explain. It's easier to show. So what I would do is I would desolder this door switch entirely first. Okay. Okay. So you want to get these off of here. Now, on a Model 1, what I like to do is, because this copper is so easily accessed, is I'll just overlap the two connectors on one side. And then I'll solder them both to that one terminal of the switch. And so now it's bridged through here. It's going to be continuous, but you're going to have access to this terminal of the switch still, where you can connect a wire that will detect the state of the switch. So when you're doing your counter and you've got your blue wire here, you can then solder your blue wire to this side of the switch. And that way when you open the door, the power will still flow to the rest of the camera because of the way we've doubled up these two connectors. But this side of the switch will lose its connectivity back to ground, and so the counter will know the door is open. Okay, so that's the one big difference with a Model 1. That's the way I like to do it. There are other ways you can desolder these connectors, bridge them together, and then have one wire from this connector go to one side of the switch and the blue wire go to the other side. But this is just the way I found is easiest. I mean, these body flexes fall apart anyways, so might as well take advantage of that. But yeah, you would just solder this guy on to here, like that. And then just Kapton it all back together with Kapton tape. But then you would have your connector connected for the door sense. Now, if you're using a pole vault, you may not need to do this. You can just wire this wire into this side as long as your pole vault has a ground connection back here in the hinge, so that it is not the rest, so that the counter and the rest of the camera is not losing power when you open the door. So I'll go ahead and wire the rest of the counter in, and we'll see how it works. Okay, so I'll demonstrate Model 1 wiring. First step is to desolder the counter again. And with these older Model 1s, I like to put a little flux on the contacts because these tend to delaminate when desoldering. Okay, take the old counter out. So now we're going to take our counter and reinstall it. All right. Then you're going to want to resolder your hinge switch back down. Okay, so again, black and yellow wire over this side, blue wire fed up towards the door. Solder your red and white onto the motor. With the ground, you're going to want to attach it to the other side. So I'm just going to cut away this cap down here so we can get a better look, because it's delaminated and that makes it hard to see. But you're going to want to connect on a Model 1, you're going to want to connect your ground to this side, because you want, when you close the camera, the power coming through here to get cut off. Now, depending on how you have your pole vault wired, that may change as well. Basically, you want it on the side of the switch where it'll get cut off when the hinge opens or closes, or when the hinge closes. Now, the door, previously we moved this copper contact over to bridge and connect to one side of the switch, so power goes in and straight out, but it also goes into the left side of the switch. And then we'll connect the door to this side so that it can sense the door when it's closed. Just be careful this copper doesn't touch that other contact. Okay. So you can see you got it coming in to this side. It's been bridged, so it'll always be continuous to the rest of the camera. And then on this side of the switch, it's going to detect that connection when the door is closed. And lastly, we got the auto eject. Let's just put the motor back first. And then we just got auto eject to hook up, which I mangled, but is this connector here. Okay, so if I insert a film pack, counter works. Now that was manual dark slide. I can switch it to auto eject by double tapping the door latch and going to the auto function and toggling it on. And now inserting a film pack, and this pack's almost dead, but it should still work. It will auto eject. Okay, last thing I want to demonstrate is just how to replace the window. Now the window on the bottom panel is going to be slightly too small, so you need to expand it. I will provide with every counter a cutout new window that can be inserted. Make sure you remove the protective film on both sides of the acrylic glass, or the acrylic. Now to get the window out, I just take a screwdriver and just push until it pops out. Okay, so the window will just pop out. It looks like this. The reason why you can't recycle this is because it's got the black mask around it. If these came totally clear, you could just reinsert the same piece of glass, but because I've got that mask, you won't be able to. That's why you need the new one cut out. And if you look inside here, you'll see there's all this space between the hole and the clips that can be filed away. So you can file up to these clips, but don't go beyond these clips. Just a side note, I wouldn't go right up to the clips. You're always going to want a little bit of an edge to sort of hold the new glass in. So you can go fairly close to these clips, but always leave yourself some sort of support here that the glass is going to press against when you push it back in. Otherwise, you'll just push it right through and out. It's essentially a trial and error. You file away a little bit, put it on the camera, see how it looks, and continue to file away until you get it right. I like to use a flat file with a tapered end, and that allows me to insert it into here and just slowly work away. Now you'll see there's like a bevel around the edge. Sometimes that's all you have to take off. But it all depends on how everything lines up when it's back in. So I'll go ahead and file away. Okay, let's assume that that's good enough. Then you would take your new window, place it in here, And they likely will just press fit in like so. I try and cut them as clean as possible so they will press fit. But I would recommend adding a dab of adhesive just on the edges to ensure it doesn't fall out. And that is how you expand the window. You'll need to keep checking on the camera and refiling until you get it right. I would make it just big enough to show the digit in the counter. Okay, the last thing I just want to show is the various features of the counter. So I've hooked up an external power source here so you can see everything. If there's no film on the counter and you have an external power source like a pole vault or a Pola Studio power kit, it will flash E for empty. It won't show that if there's no external power source because it can't turn on without the battery, which is in the film. So if I load a film pack now, it's on manual dark side eject mode right now, but it will start to count down. Okay. When you get to 2, it's going to give you two warning flashes that you're getting low on film. And then it'll stay steady again. When you get to 1, it's going to continually flash slowly to tell you that you're on your last shot. And then when you hit 0, it's going to rapidly flash 0 so that you know you're out of film, okay? Now, I've already shown how to switch on and off the auto eject, but there's another option in the menu for manually selecting or choosing the count. So if you double tap the door latch, you'll enter the menu, which is identified by this hamburger icon. So you got the hamburger icon, C for count or choose, and A for auto eject. If you linger on C for a few seconds, it'll enter the manual select mode. And then from there, you can click through the various numbers that you want to set the counter to. If you go to the hamburger icon again, it will exit the menu. So if you accidentally enter here. So let's say I want to set it to 3. I go to 3, I wait. It'll rapidly flash to tell me it's going to go into 3. It'll set the count to 3 and load a dark slide. So now when I eject that dark slide, I'm at 3. So that's good if you want to, use half-used packs, or if you're swapping packs between black and white and color, and you need to reset the count back to a certain number that you can do it manually, okay? Now, you can also go into the menu and go into auto eject. If you wait a few seconds, it'll show you the toggle. You can toggle back and forth between on and off. So let's turn the auto eject on now. Just wait a few seconds. Once it exits, it's on. And I can now auto eject. Now let's say you have a camera that doesn't auto eject and you accidentally turn the auto eject on. Well, the camera, and I'll demonstrate that by snipping the auto eject wire. Okay, so now this camera can't auto eject. The auto eject wire has been snipped. And I'll show you what happens now if you try and auto eject. It's going to try and auto eject, wait a few seconds, realize it can't, and then it'll go back to a manual dark slide. Okay? So if you had an SX-70R and you actually turned on auto eject, it's not going to do anything or wreck anything. It's just going to attempt auto eject for a few seconds and then revert back to a manual dark slide. So those are all the features of the counter. And hopefully I've gone through all the different ways to install it. Highly recommend using a experienced technician who has installed these before, but this is to help anyone who wishes to try and install one themselves.